Chapter 1. A Werewolf Romance audiobook written by author name. For entertainment only. A mute stable girl thought to be human discovers her true heritage when she's caught helping a cursed wolf. To punish her, she's brought before the ruthless Alpha King. But when she's forced to submit, she transforms for the first time, revealing an ancient bloodline that hasn't been seen for generations. The moment she howls, every alpha submits, including the king who once dismissed her. The acrid smell of burning meat filled the stone kitchens, thick enough to suffocate anyone not accustomed to the stifling heat of Shadowmere Castle's depths. Maya scrubbed the iron cauldron with hands chapped red from scalding water and endless toil. She didn't protest. She never did. In truth, she couldn't. She hadn't uttered a single word since the night her village was razed. And even if she could speak, what purpose would it serve? No one in this fortress cared to hear from a servant with no family, no pack, and no voice. The castle wolves called her Phantom. Her silver hair drew stares. Her silence bred mistrust. She'd been here since she was 10, scouring pots and polishing the boots of nobles who spoke her name like a disease. Yet every night, as the kitchens grew quiet and the servants were sent away, Maya remained. Because beyond the royal smokehouse, past the abandoned storage rooms and forgotten grain barrels, lay a rusted iron gate that opened to a neglected herb garden. A place no one visited except her and the cursed wolf. Tonight followed the same pattern. She slipped away under cover of darkness, carrying a heel of stale bread, a partially cooked turkey leg, and a small flask of water. Her boots made no sound on the stone steps as she descended into the garden. He waited as always, slouched against the crumbling brick wall, thin and gaunt despite his wolf heritage. He turned as she approached, his amber eyes reflecting moonlight like polished copper. "You're late," he croaked, his voice like shattered glass from disuse. Maya raised an eyebrow and placed the food down without comment. "Still silent," he muttered. "I suppose that makes both of us outcasts, then." He seized the bread and devoured it as if it might disappear if he hesitated. Maya settled a short distance away, her back against a vine-covered pillar. He wasn't a boy anymore. Not truly. When she first discovered him, he'd been barely older than herself. Now he was taller, broader, though still lean from hunger. Scars crisscrossed his throat where the collar had been fastened too tightly. But despite the wounds and hollow cheeks, his eyes burned with something that both terrified and fascinated her. "Why do you keep returning?" he asked eventually, voice subdued. "You don't even know me." Maya looked at him, then touched her lips and shook her head. "You cannot speak," he said. She nodded. He leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. "Perhaps that's fortunate. If you could, you'd likely tell me I'm not worth saving." She reached into her satchel and withdrew a small cloth bundle. Inside, wrapped carefully, was an ancient wolf fong, a symbol of protection. She offered it to him. The boy stared at it in shock. "This is sacred." She simply watched him. His hands trembled as he accepted it. "Who gave this to you?" Maya pointed to herself. "You crafted it?" She nodded once. He gazed at her for a long moment, then whispered, "You don't see me as a monster." Maya shrugged. He smiled faintly, and for an instant, something gentle crossed his features. "I'm called Dante." Maya blinked. That was the first time he'd revealed it. He turned toward her. "I wasn't always this way. I used to matter to someone." Maya tilted her head. "I was cursed," he said quietly, "and now I wait for someone to break it." She frowned. He looked up at the moon. "Do you ever feel like something's trapped inside you, fighting to break free?" Yes. She didn't need words to convey it. She simply nodded. The following morning, Maya was discovered. It happened without warning. Someone had tracked her. When she emerged from the cellar, food basket empty, she found herself face to face with one of the royal guards, Captain Voss, notorious for his cruelty. "What have we here?" he sneered, snatching the basket from her grasp. "Stealing from the kitchens or feeding vermin?" She tried to gesture, to deceive, to flee, but he struck her before she could move. The blow sent her crashing into the wall, her vision swimming. "I'd wager the Alpha King would be interested in this," he growled, seizing her arm. They hauled her through the castle corridors like a common criminal, past gawking nobles and whispering servants. She couldn't speak. Her mouth refused to form words even if she tried. And when she was thrown at the feet of the Alpha King himself, her heart ceased beating. King Lysander was more darkness than man. Black-haired, silver-eyed, his presence made the marble hall feel frozen. His title was earned through violence, not birthright. the youngest alpha to ever claim the Blood Throne. He had crushed uprisings before his 20th year. Now 23, he was both feared and revered, and completely, utterly untouchable. He gazed down at Maya with indifference. "This girl fed a cursed wolf?" he asked. "Yes, my king," Voss replied. "We found her leaving the cellar. The wolf's scent was everywhere." Lysander's expression didn't soften. "How long has she been doing this?" "Unknown, but it's treachery." The king descended from his throne. He circled Maya slowly, his boots echoing across the marble. "A servant," he mused, mute with a bleeding heart. He stopped before her. "You do realize cursed wolves are killed on sight?" Maya didn't move, didn't nod, didn't blink, just stared at the floor. Lysander sneered. "Perhaps I should demonstrate what mercy earns in this court." He turned to Voss. "Strip her of her position. Bring her to the arena tomorrow." "My lord," Voss hesitated. "She wants to protect cursed wolves. Let her kneel before the entire court and watch one die." Maya's heart turned to ice. Dante. He was going to expose him. And she couldn't do anything. Not without a voice. Not without power. Unless there was something inside her screaming to break free. Chapter 2. The palace arena had never been so silent. No hounds barked. No nobles gossiped. Even the wind held its breath. Maya stood in the center of the ancient platform known as the Circle of Judgment, where criminals were tried, where traitors were punished, and where the word of the Alpha King was absolute. Her wrists were bound in silver-threaded rope. Her lips bled where the guard had struck her again. Her breath came short and ragged, and every step she had taken to reach this place felt like she was walking deeper into her tomb. The crowd gathered slowly at first, then like a flood. Alphas from distant packs, Luna daughters draped in golden silk, servants and guards who knew her only as the mute kitchen girl. And above them all, seated on the high-carved throne of obsidian and steel, King Lysander. He watched her descend the marble steps to the Circle of Judgment like one might watch an insect crawling across their palm, with detached amusement and a hint of something darker. At his side stood Commander Voss, arms folded, lips curved into a cruel smirk. And beside him, 2 guards dragged someone else. Dante. His face was bloodied, one eye swollen shut, his shirt torn. They'd shackled him in wolf iron, the cruel metal that burned skin and prevented shifting. His body trembled, not in fear, but from barely contained rage. Maya stumbled forward, her legs moving before her mind could process what she was doing. Lysander raised a hand, stopping her with a single gesture. "Don't worry," he said, voice cutting through the arena like a blade. "You'll have time to look your little pet in the eyes before he dies." The court chuckled. The nobles preened, but some didn't laugh. Some stared at Maya like they'd never truly seen her before. "She is to kneel," Lysander announced, "and watch what happens to those who break our laws." Voss shoved her down. The silver rope bit into her flesh. Dante roared. "Don't you touch her." The guards kicked his knees out from under him. Blood splattered the stone. Maya looked up, eyes wide, breath catching. Lysander stood slowly and descended the stairs toward her. "Look at me," he said. She didn't. His boot nudged her chin upward. "I said look at me." Her eyes locked on his. She had no choice. And what she saw in them made her pulse thunder wildly. Not just cruelty, curiosity, and something else. Recognition. "Where did you learn to defy me?" he asked softly. She couldn't answer. She didn't try. He leaned in closer. "You know, when I was 12, my tutor told me stories about the Starfire bloodline. Wolves who didn't howl, but when they did, the earth trembled. Said it was extinct. Said it was legend." Lysander brushed a strand of her silver hair back. "But here you are, and I can smell something different." He stood upright and gestured. "Begin." The guards dragged Dante to the execution stone. The crowd tensed. The ceremonial blade was brought forth. Ancient obsidian, curved like the crescent moon. Maya's vision narrowed. Her heart screamed. And in that moment, the scream didn't stay silent. It erupted, not from her mouth, but from deep within her chest. A pulse of silver-white energy exploded outward, knocking the guards backward. The ropes binding her wrists caught fire and disintegrated. The stones beneath her feet cracked. A noble woman gasped. Lysander stepped back. And Maya rose, not with force, not with fury, but with instinct. The shift began slowly. Her bones cracked. Her breath caught in her throat. Her limbs contorted, shimmered, until she was no longer kneeling, no longer trembling. She stood in the form of a wolf, but not like any they'd seen before. Her fur was luminous silver, her eyes gold-veined with starlight, and across her back shimmered the mark of the Starfire Alpha, a spiral pattern once believed lost to history. The arena fell to stunned silence. Someone whispered, "She's one of them." Another dropped to their knees. And then Lysander, Alpha King, warrior of blood and shadow, took one step forward and lowered his head. Not in submission, but in awe, in confusion, in recognition of fate. Dante, still bound, looked up and smiled. "She's awakened," he whispered. But not all were pleased. From the edge of the crowd, an old alpha with a raven crest on his cape hissed to his kin, "Kill her before she remembers who she truly is." Lysander turned sharply, his voice booming. "No one touches her." His wolf eyes blazed. "Bring her to the high chambers immediately." Maya, still shifting back, still dizzy, collapsed into the arms of a stunned servant. But as her vision blurred again, she saw Lysander watching her. Not with malice, not with pity, but with warning and perhaps hope. Chapter 3. The corridors of the royal palace had never echoed like this before. Maya's footsteps, unbound now, moved shakily across the polished stone as she was escorted. Not dragged, not beaten, but led by two silent guards toward the high chambers. Her body still trembled from the shift, her vision flickering with flashes of gold and silver. Every nerve hummed like it remembered the wolf beneath her skin. Every breath felt too deep, too sharp. She wasn't a servant anymore, and that terrified her more than being one ever had. She clutched the cloak someone had thrown over her shoulders after the shift. It still smelled like smoke and iron, two scents now so unnatural to her that behind her, whispers stirred. Nobles had seen it. Guards had seen it. The court had seen it. She had shifted, not in private, not in fear, but in front of the entire royal court. And they had bowed. She didn't remember much of the moment itself, just the rush, the searing of light, and the overwhelming sensation that she wasn't alone, that something ancient had risen inside her. Something she'd been holding back for years without even realizing it. It was like she'd opened her mouth for the first time, and the whole world heard her scream without needing sound. The high chambers were the private council rooms of the Alpha King. Only the highest-ranking wolves, military strategists, and bloodline historians were permitted there. Maya had once scrubbed the floors outside it with sand and boiled vinegar. Now she walked in as, what? A monster, a myth, a threat, or worse, a challenge. Inside, 3 elders sat with tightly clenched jaws. Scrolls of ancient lineage lay unrolled across a long oak table. There was a weight in the air, heavy with incense and iron, and tension so thick it made her gag. Lysander stood at the far end, arms folded, hair loose around his shoulders like a midnight crown. His silver eyes flicked up the second she entered. "Leave us," he ordered. The guards hesitated but obeyed. The door closed with a hiss of wood against stone. Then silence. He stared at her. Maya stared back, unsure whether to bow or shift again or just collapse. "You've been pretending," he said at last. She blinked. He stepped closer, slow and measured. "You think I can't tell?" he continued, circling her. "You knew, didn't you? That there was something different, something off." Maya shook her head quickly. "No." His voice was quiet but sharp. "Then explain what happened in that arena. Explain how a mute kitchen girl managed to tap into a bloodline that was wiped out 3 centuries ago." She couldn't explain. Even if she could speak, there were no words, only flashes, only pieces. A fire, a woman screaming her name, a glowing wolf with her same eyes, and a voice inside that howled louder than the world could hold. Lysander exhaled sharply and turned toward the table. "They say your kind were wiped out during the War of Shadows. That the Starfire bloodline was unstable, dangerous, capable of awakening power in others, of commanding nature. Some called them demigods. Others called them traitors." He looked over his shoulder. "Which are you?" Maya's hands curled into fists. She didn't know who she was, but she knew what she wasn't. Not a traitor, not a tool, and not his. She raised her chin slightly. Lysander noticed, and something in his jaw twitched. "You're not just anyone," he murmured, turning to face her fully now. "And that means you're a threat to every house that's fought for centuries to erase your kind from our history." He stepped closer, closer than she expected, and then his voice dropped. "So I need to know right now, Maya of No House. Do you want to live?" She froze, then slowly nodded. "Then listen closely," he said, voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. "You're going to say nothing. You're going to let them call you a miracle, a weapon, a relic, but you'll never correct them. Understand. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Lysander's lips twitched in a half-smile. I know you're not stupid. You survived this court without a voice. That takes cunning. Use it now. He stepped back. You are to appear at the Council of Fangs in 3 days. They'll want to see you shift again. They'll test your blood. They'll try to manipulate you. Some may try to kill you. She swallowed hard. So stay close to me, Lysander added. For now. Maya's brows lifted slightly. You're surprised? He asked, brow arching. You think I'd let a creature like you walk around unguarded? I'm not stupid either, Maya, and I don't care what blood you carry. If you make one wrong move, I'll put you down myself. A chill ran down her spine. But beneath it, something else stirred. A challenge and, strangely, a flicker of trust, or at least mutual survival. He turned back toward the table. You're dismissed. Maya exited the chamber with her thoughts spinning like leaves in a storm. At the end of the hall, someone was waiting. Dante. His bruises were healing. His eyes still burned. The guards had released him. For now. He looked her up and down. So you really didn't know? She shook her head slowly. His jaw clenched. I did. She blinked. I knew the moment I saw you. Your scent, your eyes. His throat worked. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to drag you into what I am. She stepped closer. You're not cursed, she mouthed silently. He smiled weakly. No, I'm a guardian, sworn to your line since the first star. Her chest tightened. But I failed you, he added bitterly. I failed your mother. I was too young when the old court fell. I couldn't stop them from placing the silence curse on you, from wiping your name from every record. Maya touched his hand gently. He flinched, then gripped her back. I swore I'd protect you if you ever came into power, he whispered. And now that you've awakened, they'll all come for you. Maya nodded, but this time she didn't feel small, didn't feel like a ghost in a palace full of wolves. She felt something burning beneath her skin, something ancient, something ready. In a chamber high above the palace, Lysander watched her through the glass window. She's not just Starfire, he murmured to his war advisor. She's the last one who can awaken the first wolf. The advisor stiffened. Then you must bind her to you before someone else does. Lysander's eyes narrowed. No, he whispered. I want her to choose me. Chapter 4. The great hall of Shadowmere Palace shimmered with tension. The high stained glass windows painted shifting colors across the floor, refracting crimson and gold onto the gathered wolves. Every bloodline had sent a representative. The Council of Fangs had convened, and Maya, once a nameless servant, now stood at its center. They had dressed her in ceremonial silver robes, stitched with threads enchanted to shimmer like starlight. Her hair, usually pinned and messy from kitchen labor, now flowed freely in soft silver waves, glowing faintly under the moon's touch. Lysander stood to her right, not as her captor, but her shield, though his expression betrayed nothing. Dante stood behind her, silent as stone, though his eyes tracked every movement in the room with the lethal patience of a wolf bred for war. Maya kept her head high, not proud, not defiant, but aware. Every noble in this room had once treated her as nothing. Now they whispered of prophecy. Now they feared what she might become. The council's lead scribe, an elderly wolf named Corvus, cleared his throat and read aloud. On the 13th night of the blood moon, the court shall witness the reawakening of power long buried. The Starfire line, marked by silence and storm, shall reveal itself again through the howl of a girl forgotten. The chamber went still. Corvus stepped aside, and from the northern throne, the matriarch of the Frostclaw pack rose. Alpha Serena Frostclaw was known for her venomous politics and mastery of ice magic. Her white hair was braided with silver, her eyes pale and cold. She stepped forward, nostrils flaring. I want proof, she said. Anyone can stitch starlight into a robe and call it prophecy. Lysander's jaw clenched, but he remained still. Maya didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She stepped forward. The chamber parted. Guards tensed. Some nobles whispered shielding incantations. Others leaned forward, hungry to see something spectacular or devastating. And Maya exhaled. Not fear, not panic. Release. She let her body relax into the memory of the arena. The energy, the fire, the truth. Her heartbeat slowed, then quickened, and her breath caught as her bones whispered to shift. The light in the hall dimmed as though the very air paused to watch. And then she changed, not with screams or pain, but in a slow, glowing cascade of silver light. Her robes fell in folds as her body shifted into her wolf form. Taller than any average shifter, lean but powerful, with fur that glowed like stellar flame and ancient spirals etched faintly into her skin beneath it. A gasp echoed across the chamber. The Frostclaw matriarch took a full step back. "She's not just Starfire," one elder whispered. "She's the Voidborn," another breathed. "Impossible." That line was broken. "She bears the glyph." Look. The glyph on her left shoulder glowed with magic that pulsed in sync with the moon overhead. It marked her not just as Starfire, but as a descendant of the original bloodline that once ruled all packs before the Great War. Maya let the wolf form hold a moment longer, then shifted back. Her bare feet touched the stone floor with quiet strength. Someone dropped to their knees. Another followed. Soon half the chamber had bowed, not in obedience but recognition. Lysander said nothing. He didn't move, but a shadow flickered behind his eyes that Maya couldn't read: possession, regret, or doubt. That night, back in her private quarters, luxurious now and guarded by elite royal wolves, Maya paced. She hadn't expected it to feel like this. Power wasn't thrilling. It was terrifying. Her body still trembled from the shift, from the sensation of her magic aligning with the ancient glyphs. Dante entered silently. "You were magnificent," he said, leaning against the door frame. She glanced at him, then turned back toward the balcony. He hesitated. "They'll all want something from you now. Even Lysander." She didn't respond. He stepped closer. "I remember your mother. She had your fire." Maya turned to him sharply. "You don't remember?" he asked. She slowly shook her head. Dante stepped toward her. "You were cursed after she died. Not just silenced, but erased. They erased your presence from memory, from documents. I only remembered because I was bonded to your mother. My oath shielded me." She breathed in sharply, the air catching in her chest. "You've been hidden for a reason, Maya," he said. "And now that you're exposed, the same wolves who destroyed your family will try again." She nodded once, resolved. "I won't let that happen again," he added. "Not while I breathe." Their eyes locked. And in that moment she remembered a flash, a fire, a man's voice screaming her name, and a small boy with golden eyes pulling her hand, saying, "Run." Her breath hitched. "You," she whispered. The sound startled them both. Dante stepped forward. "Say that again." But her throat ached too much. The words wouldn't come. Still, she had spoken. For the first time in years. Across the palace in the war chamber, Lysander sat alone. A fire blazed behind him. An ancient book lay open before him, etched in blood, bound in hide. On the page, "Only the Starfire heir can unlock the gate of shadows where the first wolf sleeps." Lysander closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I'm not ready to lose to fate." Chapter 5. Morning light spilled across the marble floor of Maya's chamber. Warm and soft, almost gentle, like the world itself was trying to offer an apology for everything she'd been through. She sat on the edge of the bed, barefoot, eyes trained on the rising sun, as if hoping the light would bring answers she couldn't yet voice. A bowl of untouched food sat beside her. She hadn't eaten since the council. Her body still ached from the shift, from the weight of 1,000 stairs. She felt stretched thin, like her soul had grown too large for her skin. And then the door creaked. She tensed, scenting before seeing. Lysander. He stepped into the room without ceremony. He wasn't wearing his usual black ceremonial armor today. Instead, a loose dark tunic clung to his lean frame, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. No crown, no guards, just him. Maya didn't rise. "Can you speak again?" he asked. Silence. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting in the hem of her robe. Lysander sighed and crossed to stand beside the window, resting one hand on the sill. "You said one word last night. That means the curse is weakening." He glanced sideways. "What did you remember?" She didn't answer. "Dante said it triggered something," he pressed. "A memory." Maya's jaw tightened. Lysander's tone sharpened. "If you're remembering, you need to tell me. I'm trying to keep you alive." Maya stood slowly and walked to the balcony. Her bare feet were silent against the stone floor. Her silver hair caught the wind like fire on silk. "You don't trust me," he said behind her. She turned, and then softly, like a flicker of wind breaking across still water, she spoke. "Why should I?" Lysander froze. It wasn't the voice that startled him. It was the clarity, the sheer conviction in two trembling words. His mouth parted, then closed again. "No one in this palace has spoken to me like that in years," he finally murmured. She raised an eyebrow, then turned back to the rising sun. Later that day, while crossing the East Gardens, Maya found herself face to face with High Priestess Vera, an elder mystic from the Star Temple who had not been seen at court in over a decade. The woman walked with a staff carved from heartwood, her eyes clouded with blindness, yet glowing faintly with silver fire. "Child," she said in a voice like crumbling stone. The first word is always the one the curse fears most. Maya bowed instinctively. The priestess touched Maya's forehead with two gnarled fingers and whispered, "There are more words inside you. Guard them and use them wisely." Maya stared. Vera smiled faintly. "He fears you." "Lysander," Maya whispered. "No," the priestess said. "The one who buried your name. The one who cursed your voice. He watches now from the shadows, waiting for your wolf to stumble." That evening, as moonlight spilled across the palace towers, Lysander stood in the war room, staring at a map of the eastern borders. Reports had arrived. Villages collapsing into ruin. Wolves dying of a blight no healer could fix. Dante entered without knocking. She spoke again. Lysander didn't turn. "I know. You should tell her the truth." Lysander's jaw clenched. "She's not ready." Dante stepped closer. "You're scared. She's a voidborn. If she sees the wrong future, we're all dead." Dante's voice dropped. "And if she sees the truth?" Lysander looked up. "Then I lose her." That night, Maya dreamt of fire, of a woman standing atop a black hill, bathed in starlight, calling her name. "Lyra," the woman whispered. "Your name was Lyra, before they stripped it from you." In the dream, the stars bled. In the dream, Lysander stood behind her, whispering, "You'll destroy us all." And she woke screaming, but this time the scream had words. The next morning, she went to Lysander's private garden unannounced. He was meditating near the fountain, hair damp with morning dew. She approached slowly, and when he opened his eyes to look at her, she said aloud, "I remember my name." His gaze sharpened. "Lyra," she continued. "That's what she called me, my mother." He stood slowly. "Then the curse is breaking faster than expected." She stepped closer, voice steady. "You know more than you've said." Lysander hesitated. Then he nodded. "I've read the old prophecies. I knew you might be Starfire when I saw you react to Dante's blood on the arena stones, but I didn't think you'd awaken so violently." She crossed her arms. "And what now? You parade me before the Haifong court? Use me as a weapon to win your war?" Lysander's face tightened. "No." He walked to her, lowering his voice. "I don't want to use you, Lyra. I want to protect you, but I can't do that if you keep hiding pieces of yourself from me." She searched his face, saw no lie, no manipulation, just fear and something deeper, something she didn't know how to name. Later, in the halls of the Whispering Wing, where only the seers once walked, Lyra found a broken mirror, one her mother had touched before dying. As she gazed into it, her reflection shimmered, and in its place she saw herself in a battle she didn't understand, cloaked in white fire, Lysander at her back, and a wolf with hollow eyes rising from the shadows. A voice echoed in the mirror. "He is coming for you." And then, "You are not ready." Lyra turned from the mirror and ran, not away, but toward her future, whatever it cost. Chapter 6. The library at Shadowmere Palace was unlike any other. Spanning 3 floors and carved into the cliffside overlooking the crystal sea, its stone shelves housed not just books, memories, scrolls encoded with magic, tomes whispered into existence by long-dead seers, and mirrors that recorded truth rather than reflection. Lyra stood in its heart, clutching a worn journal that once belonged to her mother. Her fingers brushed the faded etchings on the front, Celeste Starfire, and her throat tightened. The visions were growing stronger. Last night, she'd woken with blood on her palms and a single word carved into the inside of her mind. Beware. She hadn't told Lysander. Not yet. She had barely slept since the mirror showed her the wolf with hollow eyes. A creature too familiar to be a stranger and too monstrous to be her past. So when she heard the whisper echoing between the stone stacks, it didn't startle her. It called to her. "Lyra." The voice was young, soft, familiar. She turned. There was no one there. Only a trail of frost blooming across the marble floor like veins of a dying star. Her breath caught. Not fear, recognition. She followed. Deep within the oldest wing of the library, where even Lysander hadn't dared walk with her, the frost led her to a sealed iron door. Ancient glyphs shimmered on its surface. No lock, no handle, just a circle, and in the center, a small child's palm printed into the metal. Lyra hesitated, then slowly she pressed her own hand against it. The door groaned and opened. Inside was nothing but a dark hall and a single boy standing barefoot, staring at her with empty silver eyes. His hair was wild, black as coal, and frost clung to his lashes. "Lyra," he whispered. "I've waited so long." She stepped back. "Who are you?" He tilted his head, voice small. "Don't you remember? You pulled me from the fire." Her heart thundered. "I don't. You were 4. They were going to kill me because I didn't shift. You screamed. You made the storm come. You saved me." Her knees wobbled. He paused, voice breaking. "I think I'm your brother." In the war room above, Lysander dropped his goblet of wine. The ripple of power that surged through the palace was unmistakable. "Sir?" Dante asked, entering sharply. "She found him," Lysander whispered. Dante stiffened. "Gods," Lysander muttered. "The Frostborn." The boy stepped closer. "I don't have a name," he said. "They didn't give me one after they took me away. They just called me Frost." Lyra's breath hitched. Frost. She remembered that word, a lullaby, a whisper in her sleep when she was a child. Starfire sings to Frost's cry. 2 torn souls beneath one sky. She knelt down. "Frost," she said softly. "I remember now." His hollow eyes widened with hope. A tremor of warmth passed through the air. "You called to me through the mirror," she said. "I couldn't do it before." "Not until you remembered," he whispered. "Not until your voice came back." She reached forward slowly and cupped his freezing hand. "You're real," she whispered. He smiled, and then something in his face shifted. "But he knows I'm awake now." Lyra froze. "Who?" Frost turned his head, and in that moment the world behind him split. A scream, raw and ancient, ripped through the corridor. The light flickered. A wave of rot slammed against Lyra's skin. Shadow poured into the chamber. Not darkness. Rot. A presence. A curse-given form. "Run!" Frost screamed. Lyra bolted from the vault, pulling Frost with her. The shadows chased, snarling and clawing at the stone. Behind them, books shattered, glyphs cracked, magic screamed. Lysander met them at the top of the stairwell, sword drawn, his aura burning like wildfire. "What in the hell?" he began. "Shadowborn." Frost gasped. "He followed me. I didn't mean to." Lysander shoved them behind him. "Go." The shadow had a voice. It whispered through the walls as it flooded upward. "Daughter of Starfire, you are not enough. Your wolf is broken. You will burn them all." Lysander slashed through the darkness, but it kept reforming. Lyra grabbed Frost's hand. "Get to the war chamber." "I'm not leaving him," Frost began. "You won't," she said, voice suddenly fierce. She turned and shifted. Not slowly this time, explosively. The shadow recoiled as her body blazed silver gold, her glyphs glowing with power she no longer feared. She lunged, her wolf form crashing into the heart of the curse. It screamed and shattered. When the dust cleared, Lysander coughed through smoke, eyes wide as he looked at her. "You've grown," he muttered. She shifted back, panting, shaking. Frost stumbled forward. "He's not dead, just vanished." Lysander eyed him. "And you?" "I'm her brother," Frost said proudly. "The first Frostborn," Lysander sighed. "Of course you are." Lyra leaned heavily against a pillar, but her eyes gleamed and her voice was strong. "We're not done," she said. Lysander met her gaze. "No, this war is just beginning." Chapter 7. The Star Temple had been abandoned for over a decade. Once the sacred heart of the Shifter realms, it now lay in crumbling silence atop a cliff of bone-white stone, where ocean winds moaned like mourning wolves. Its walls, carved with stellar runes and stained by centuries of prophecy, still pulsed faintly with ancient power, waiting for a voice strong enough to awaken them. Lyra stood at its threshold, heart beating a strange rhythm in her chest. Frost clung close beside her, his eyes darting across the darkened archways while Lysander followed a few steps behind, silent as shadow. "This place," Lyra whispered. "It knows me. It remembers your blood," Lysander said. She looked up at the massive stone doors. They were cracked, blackened by old fire, and at their center, a circular glyph pulsed with a pale blue light. Frost stepped closer, hand hovering near the glyph. "I've seen this symbol before. In my dreams." Lysander's jaw tightened. "This is where your mother died." The air shifted. Lyra froze. "What?" Lysander nodded, eyes unreadable. "Celeste Starfire tried to seal the curse here. She failed. Her blood fueled the gate's lock." Frost turned, staring at him. "And you never thought to tell her?" "I didn't know how," Lysander said, voice low. "Your memories were still buried." And I thought if you came here too soon, I would break, Lyra finished for him. Lysander met her gaze. You're stronger than I thought. Good, she said, because I'm done being protected. Inside the temple, silver starlight streamed through broken domes, casting shattered constellations across the floor. Vines crept between tiles etched with glyphs long since banned. The air shimmered faintly, and Lyra felt her wolf stir beneath her skin, alert, aware. This was our sanctuary once, Frost whispered, brushing a hand against an altar. Before they turned it into a prison. Lysander's steps slowed. The council erased it from history after the curse failed. They called it the Temple of Ruin, but its true name was the Womb of Stars. Lyra turned to him. You really need to start saying these things earlier. A small ironic smile flickered across Lysander's lips. Frost suddenly froze. Someone's here. Lyra stilled. The air had shifted again, heavier now. From the inner sanctum, a shadow moved. Not the curse, not rot, a ghost. A woman stepped forward, not walking, but gliding just above the stone, glowing faintly, her long silver hair flowing behind her like starlight. Lyra's knees buckled. Mother, she breathed. Celeste Starfire's spirit looked just as she did in Lyra's fractured memories. Tall, regal, her presence wrapped in a grace that made the world quiet, but her eyes were full of sorrow. You've come too soon, the ghost whispered. The seal is not yet ready. The truth still hides beneath lies. Lysander dropped to one knee, head bowed. Frost stared in awe. Lyra stepped forward, trembling. I need to know what happened to you. Why did they erase us? Why did I forget you? Celeste reached out, a hand of light brushing Lyra's cheek. They took everything, she whispered. Your name, your brother, your voice. They feared what you were destined to become. They called it mercy. Lyra choked back a cry. But your fire endured. Even buried, even cursed, you held on to it. Frost moved closer, his voice small. You tried to protect us. Celeste turned to him, smiling faintly. My Frostborn, my second flame. I am sorry for your pain. He nodded, wiping his eyes with a trembling sleeve. Celeste's gaze returned to Lyra. The curse was never about silence. It was about control. If they could cage your voice, they could cage your fate. Who? Lyra asked. Who did this? Celeste's form flickered. They walk among the council still, she said. The ones who bound my blood to this gate. But you are stronger than them now. The stone beneath their feet cracked. The glyph at the center of the floor flared to life. Lysander rose sharply. What's happening? The seal is failing, Celeste warned. He's pushing through. Lyra's hands began to glow. I can stop it, she said. I have to. Lysander reached for her. Lyra, no. But she stepped into the circle. Magic roared around her. The glyphs climbed her arms like fireflies, whispering old truths into her bones. Her eyes turned silver white. I remember, she whispered. I remember everything. The seal cracked, and from the center a new figure rose. Tall, horned, cloaked in ragged twilight. The Shadow King. Daughter of the Starfire, he rasped. I've been waiting. Lyra's power surged. No more waiting, she said. And she lunged. They clashed in a storm of light and shadow. Lysander grabbed Frost and pulled him back as the temple quaked. Lyra danced between beams of darkness, every movement now an echo of her mother's grace, but fueled by her own fire. The Shadow King snarled. You were supposed to die with her. I was supposed to burn, she shouted. And I did. Now I rise. She punched her palm into the floor, and the seal exploded. Light flooded the temple. The Shadow King screamed and vanished. Silence returned. Lyra stood in the center of the broken circle, panting, glowing, alive. Her mother's spirit smiled. You've done what I could not. Then she faded, leaving only starlight behind. Outside the temple, under a sky heavy with stars, Frost curled into her side. Do you think it's over? He asked. Lysander stood watch at the edge of the cliff, sword sheathed. No, Lyra said softly. But now we fight with truth on our side. Chapter 8. The doors of the Haifeng council chamber boomed open. Not pushed, blasted. Lyra stepped through first, robes scorched at the hem from the explosion at the Star Temple, her eyes still faintly glowing with starfire. Behind her, Lysander strode with a blade slung across his back, and Frost kept pace with steps quiet but unwavering. All 20 council members stood from their carved thrones as the trio entered. Lady Lyra, drawled Councillor Voss, a sleek jackal shifter with venom in his smile. We were not expecting. No, you weren't, she cut in, her voice cool and sharp. Voss blinked. Lysander glanced at her, lips curving faintly. She was no longer hiding behind silences or court etiquette. She was here to confront them all. At the far end of the chamber, seated beneath the golden sigil of the Star Tribunal, sat Matriarch Raven, a white-haired wolf with cruel beauty and unreadable eyes. "You stand on dangerous ground, girl," Raven said, voice like falling snow. "This chamber was not summoned by your blood." Lyra met her gaze evenly. "No, but I walk with Starfire, and my mother's blood still stains your stones." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Frost took a step forward. "You tried to erase her and me." Raven's gaze shifted. The Frostborn. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. One counselor, Marcus, muttered a curse under his breath. Lyra raised her chin. "You lied to this court for 17 years. You let my mother die, branded me cursed, silenced me with blood magic. And for what?" Voss spoke, trying to regain footing. "Because your line threatened the balance. Your mother, she wanted to change the laws. She wanted seers to rule. She wanted freedom," Lysander said coldly. "And you killed her for it." The chamber burst into whispers. Lyra took one step forward. "I recovered her journal. The seal at the Star Temple held the Shadow King. You destroyed it. You broke the seal that kept him banished." Raven narrowed her eyes. "You have no proof." Frost stepped forward and pulled from his coat a shard of obsidian etched with seer glyphs. The final page from Celeste Starfire's grimoire. Lyra held it high. "The curse was never about me. It was yours, your guilt, your cowardice." Counselor Thane, a tiger shifter and elder of the Eastern Fong, stood. "This is treason, Matriarch." Raven's lips parted. "You dare accuse?" "I do." Thane turned toward the council. "They blamed a child, manipulated this body into silence. They knew the Shadow King was stirring and did nothing. Because they couldn't control us," Lysander added. "And now they can't control her." The council broke into shouting, voices raised, accusations thrown like daggers. But Lyra didn't flinch. She stepped to the center circle, the seat of judgment, and took her place inside. Her voice rang like a bell. "I claim my birthright. I claim Starfire. And I call for a vote of dissolution." Every counselor stopped. Even Raven paled. "That would dismantle the current Haifong," Thane whispered. "Restructure the court under Starfire blood." "It's illegal," Marcus barked. "It's ancient law," Lysander corrected. "Ratified during the First Seer Age." Raven rose, her robe rustling like a serpent. "You're unleashing chaos." "No," Lyra said. "I'm ending yours." Hours later, the chamber glowed under sacred flame. Each counselor cast their vote one by one into the ceremonial basin. The fire flared white with each yes and darkened with each no. When the final vote was cast, Thane stepped forward and recited the verdict. "By blood and fire, the council stands broken. Let the Starfire line rise anew." Lyra stood frozen, not in disbelief, but in a quiet, consuming realization. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Outside the council hall, Lysander caught up with her. "You did it." She turned, face unreadable. "We did." His gaze softened. "What happens now?" She looked toward the sky. "Now we rebuild. We protect those like Frost. We prepare for the Shadow King's return." Lysander stepped closer. "And us?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You saw the future, didn't you? In the temple." She hesitated. "I saw pieces," she admitted. "And were we?" He faltered. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "We were together," she said. "But the path was full of fire." He laughed softly. "Of course it was. But I'm not afraid of fire anymore," she added. He leaned down, brushed her forehead with a kiss. "Then neither am I." Back in the palace, Frost stared out over the cliff from the Starfire spire. He wasn't smiling, because far below, far in the distance, the wind had begun to howl. And in that howl, Frost heard something only Frostborn could understand. The curse wasn't done yet. Chapter 9. Starfire Palace should have been safe. With the council dissolved and the matriarch dethroned, Lyra should have felt peace. But the halls still echoed with whispers, and the torches burned low, flickering unnaturally against the marble walls. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She felt it in the bones of the palace, in the way Frost flinched from his own reflection, in the way Lysander kept glancing toward the woods that bordered the cliffs as though expecting a shadow to step free at any moment. Even the wolves in the lower keep wouldn't shift. Their pack healer, Senna, had fallen ill. Her hands had darkened, veins webbing black beneath the skin like roots strangling light. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "It's under our skin," she whispered to Lyra. "The blight, it's not gone." Lyra stood now at her bedside, Frost at her side, watching helplessly as the young healer's once golden eyes turned the color of dead frost. Lysander stormed into the chamber moments later, rage rolling off him like a heat wave. "I found 2 more in the barracks," he said. "Same signs. The rot's moving faster." Lyra's brow furrowed. "But we sealed the Shadow King. We banished him." "We banished one part of him," Frost interrupted quietly. "But the blight was never just his. It was seated before him, long before." Lyra turned to him. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "I remembered something in the Star Temple. Something from before. When I was still in the Shadow Realm," his voice dropped to a whisper. "There were others, hosts chosen to carry the blight. They were marked before they were born." Lysander tensed. "And they're here." "They always were," Frost whispered. Senna coughed suddenly, violently, and her body convulsed as black veins burst into view along her arms. Lyra knelt quickly beside her, placing glowing fingers at her temple. "Don't," Senna gasped. "Don't touch me. It spreads." "I'm not afraid," Lyra whispered. Light surged from her hands, gold and silver. And for a brief moment, Senna's breathing slowed, but only for a moment. The darkness pushed back, fought hard. Lyra stumbled backward, shaking. Frost caught her. "It's adapting," he said grimly. "Learning from you." Lysander's voice darkened. "So how do we stop it?" Lyra looked at him, then at Senna, and her answer came like thunder. "We don't treat the infected. We go after the source." They gathered in the high spire hours later, the tallest tower in the palace, where the wind howled like wolves in mourning. A map lay spread across the old stone table. Lyra traced her finger along the southern edge, the ruins of Blackthorn Grove. "This is where the first shifter was blight-marked," she said. "A rogue wolf named Corvin who turned against his own pack and was burned alive by seers." Lysander frowned. "That grove's cursed. No one's come out of there alive in decades." "Exactly," Frost murmured. "That's where the blight sleeps. Or used to." Lysander stared at him. "You're saying it's awake." "I'm saying it's calling," Frost whispered. They left at dusk. Lysander rode at the front, flanked by 2 of his most loyal guards. Lyra and Frost followed close behind, the sigil of starfire gleaming faintly on her cloak. The forest thickened quickly. Light died under gnarled trees, and the air turned cold and sour. By midnight, even the horses began to resist. Then the howls began. Distant wrong. Lysander raised a hand. "Dismount." They proceeded on foot into the grove's heart, blades drawn, magic simmering under skin. Lyra's pulse quickened. The trees here leaned in on themselves like bones warped by time. Bark peeled back to reveal glowing roots. The earth pulsed like a heartbeat. They were not welcome. And then they found it. A ring of stones, obsidian carved with runes that pulsed black, surrounding a pit of ash. Frost stepped toward it, trembling. "This is where I was born," he said. "Where they pulled me from Shadow." Lyra turned slowly. "Do you feel it?" Lysander nodded grimly. "We're being watched." From the ash pit a shape rose. Not the Shadow King. Not even a shifter. Something older. It slithered into form, coalescing from smoke and ash into the shape of a woman cloaked in bleeding roots. "You wear her fire," the creature said, voice like cracking stone. "The daughter of Starfire comes." Lyra raised her chin. "And I bring light." "You bring weakness," the creature hissed. "You sealed the king, but the rot has many roots. You would have done better to burn." "I'm not afraid of you," Lyra said, stepping closer. The creature laughed. "Then come, child. Let me show you your future." Suddenly, the grove exploded in light. Visions seared across Lyra's mind. A burning palace. Frost screaming. Lysander impaled by a spear of rot. The blight spreading across the world, turning wolves into husks, seers into shadows. And in the center, Lyra glowing with power. Alone. Utterly alone. The vision snapped away. Lyra gasped, staggering, but Lysander caught her. "What did you see?" he asked. "Everything," she breathed. "And nothing I want to come true." The creature slithered closer, unbothered by her resistance. "You were always meant to fall." "No," Frost whispered, stepping in front of her. "She was meant to fight, and so was I." He raised his hands. For the first time, shadow and starlight burned together. The creature screamed, and Lyra threw her hands forward. A spear of light burst from her palms. It struck the center of the ash pit, and the grove shattered. When the dust settled, The blight's voice had vanished. The ash pit was gone. The stones had cracked. Frost collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Lysander helped Lyra up. Is it over? She looked toward the broken grove. No, she said. But we've cut one of its roots. As dawn broke, they returned to the palace. The sky was quiet, but the horizon still burned red. Rest while you can, Lyra whispered. We haven't seen the last of it. Chapter 10. Frost stood beneath the twin moons, staring at his trembling hands. They still glowed faintly, shadow woven with silver like dusk and dawn braided together. Not pure darkness, not pure light. A new kind of power, unwritten, unblessed, and terrifying. Behind him, Lyra watched in silence. She didn't interrupt. She didn't comfort. She just waited. It was what Frost needed most. Eventually, he turned, voice hollow. You saw it, didn't you? The creature in the grove. She knew what I was. Lyra nodded slowly. You're more than Frostborn. He gave a broken laugh. I don't even know what that means anymore. It means your blood matters. It means your shadow has a heart. Lysander stepped onto the terrace, arms crossed, gaze wary. It also means we need answers. That creature didn't rise by accident. It was summoned. By who? Lyra asked. Lysander's gaze turned grim. We need to talk about the first flame. They gathered in the starfire crypt beneath the palace. The air was damp, heavy with forgotten promises. Only Lysander carried a torch. Lyra guided Frost by touch, her palm on his back steady and warm. The tombs here were carved with names Lyra had never heard, ancestors stripped from her memory. Lysander led them to a sealed arch etched with fire runes. She didn't want anyone finding this, he said. Celeste's last journal page. It warned of something buried beneath the lineage. A secret even the seers feared. He placed a hand to the stone. The runes flared, recognizing his blood. The arch opened with a whisper of flame. Inside, the chamber was circular. At its center was a stone altar, and on it burned a single steady flame. Crimson gold, silent, unmoving. Lyra stepped closer. What is it? She whispered. Lysander's voice was barely audible. The first flame, the last remnant of the original Starseer blood, untouched, unbound. It was said to burn only for those who carry the true voice. Lyra glanced at Frost. He stared at the flame, and then to everyone's shock it flared. Not once, 3 times. Lysander stepped back, stunned. That's impossible. Frost's face had gone pale. I didn't mean to. You didn't do anything wrong, Lyra said quickly, stepping beside him. It recognized you. No, Lysander murmured. It claimed him. The flame twisted, and suddenly the chamber was filled with echoes, not sound but memories. Visions played out in the fire. A woman with burning eyes giving birth in a temple of mirrors. A child swaddled in shadows, marked by both starlight and void. A prophecy carved into bone. The Frostborn shall bear the torch, and the torch shall set fire to the curse. Lyra staggered back. It's you, she whispered to Frost. You're not just Frostborn. You're the torch. Lysander looked at the boy with new eyes. He's the weapon. No, Frost said, trembling. I'm a person, and we won't forget that, Lyra said fiercely. She turned to Lysander. He's not a key to be turned. He's not a prophecy to be used. He's family. Lysander held her gaze, then slowly nodded. The flame began to dim, but not die. It settled into a soft glow, curling back onto the altar, as if satisfied. Later, back in the war room, they tried to make sense of it. Frost sat with his knees drawn to his chest, listening as Lysander explained the Order of the Crimson Vow, an ancient cult of seers that believed the first flame would destroy all corrupted magic, even if it meant raising half the world. They'll come for him, Lysander said flatly, now that the flame has chosen. Let them try, Lyra replied. We're done hiding. But Frost raised his head. What if they're right? He asked. What if I do destroy everything? Lyra crossed the room and dropped beside him. You won't, she said simply. Because you have us. He stared into her eyes, and slowly he nodded. That night he dreamed of the grove, of the blight, of Lyra burning like a falling star, and a voice whispered through it all. The torch burns both ways, child. You will choose what to save. He woke gasping, drenched in cold sweat. And in the corner of his room, something moved. Not a creature, not a shadow. A man with antlers of bone. The Shadow King, alive, smiling. Hello, Frost, he said, eyes glowing with red fire. We have much to discuss. Chapter 11. Frost's breath caught in his throat. The room was cold. Too cold. And the man, if he could be called that, stood in the corner like he'd always belonged there. A cloak of shifting shadows draped over his shoulders, and antlers of pale bone curled from his temples like a twisted crown. But it was his eyes that rooted Frost in place, burning, knowing. "You're supposed to be sealed," Frost whispered. The Shadow King chuckled. "Child, you sealed a vessel. Not the will, not the voice." He took one slow step forward. "And your fire woke me." Frost's heart pounded. "You're not real. Then why are you listening?" He bolted from the bed, grabbing the blade Lysander had left him. It trembled in his grip. Shadow pulsed from the handle, but when he slashed forward, the king didn't even flinch. "Strike if you wish," the Shadow King said mildly. "It only makes the bond stronger." "What do you want?" "To talk." Frost hesitated. "I don't bargain with monsters." The Shadow King smiled slowly. "But monsters make the best deals." He gestured toward the moonlit window. "Tell me, Frost, what do you see when you dream?" Frost said nothing. "You see fire, destruction, her falling, Lyra, your star, and you know deep down you'll never be able to stop it." "You're lying." "Am I?" The king's gaze sharpened. "The first flame marks you, but fire devours as well as protects. What do you think happens when your powers grow beyond your control?" Frost flinched. The Shadow King's voice dropped. "Let me teach you to wield it. All of it, even the parts they fear, especially those." Lysander burst into the room then, sword drawn, Lyra close behind. The Shadow King didn't move, didn't fight. He just turned to Lyra and bowed. "Daughter of Starfire, you glow brighter than she ever did." Lyra's hands filled with light. "Get away from him. I already have what I came for." He vanished into smoke, but not before Frost saw something in his eyes. Not victory, hope. The next morning, the court was in chaos. 2 guards were missing. One of the flame seers collapsed in convulsions, black vines crawling up his spine. The Shadow King's presence had rippled across the palace like a silent scream. In the war room, Lysander slammed a fist onto the table. "We were fools to think sealing the grove was enough." "It was," Lyra said firmly. "This is something else. He's not bound by location anymore." "He's bound to me," Frost said quietly. They turned. Frost stood straighter than he had before, firmer. But there was a war behind his eyes. "I didn't invite him in, but I think part of me heard him." Lysander's jaw clenched. "You didn't answer him, did you?" Frost hesitated. "No, but you considered it," Lyra said gently. Frost didn't deny it. "He said he could help me control the flame. That if I keep growing, I'll hurt you. All of you." She stepped toward him. "And what do you believe?" "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I also don't want to be helpless." "You're not," she said firmly. "Not with us." Later, Lyra sat in the temple courtyard, breathing deeply as the wind rustled through silver leaf trees. The weight of leadership settled heavily on her shoulders. Lysander found her there. He sat beside her in silence for a long time. "You believe in him?" he asked finally. She nodded. "I do. I'm scared," he admitted. "Of Frost?" "No, of what we'll have to do if he falls." She met his gaze. "Then we make sure he doesn't." Meanwhile, Frost stood before the sealed flame chamber, staring at the altar. He remembered the Shadow King's words. "The torch burns both ways." What did it mean? Why him? Why now? He reached out. The flame didn't flare. It curled around his fingers, warm and soft like trust. And in that moment, he knew he didn't have to burn alone. That night he called them both, Lyra and Lysander, to the chamber. He lit the flame, and for the first time he let it speak. Visions rose, not just of fire, but of choices. Paths that diverged, one of destruction, one of sacrifice, and one of something else entirely. Rebirth. "I don't want to fight who I am anymore," Frost said. "I want to use this to help." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll make sure you can." Lysander nodded. Together, the flame flared, and a symbol appeared in the stone at Frost's feet. A torch split by a crescent star. The prophecy had begun. Far below the palace, in the old catacombs, the Shadow King stood before a mirror of obsidian. He smiled. "My turn," he whispered. Chapter 12. The first attack came at dawn. A boom shook the western gates of Starfire Palace, stone groaning, iron shrieking as if torn by unseen hands. Lyra shot upright in the war chamber, already dressed for morning council. Lysander burst through the doors moments later, sword drawn, face pale. "The southern sky is burning," he said. "They're here." She didn't need to ask who. She already knew. The Crimson Vow had returned. And they weren't alone. The courtyard flooded with guards. Wolves shifted in bursts of light, taking formation beneath banners of flame and crescent stars. Lyra's voice rang across the marble. Hold the line. Do not engage until ordered. This is not war yet. But the enemy didn't wait. They descended from the clouds, cloaked in golden robes etched with fire runes, riding creatures of smoke and bone, griffin wraiths long thought extinct. The leader rode at their center, her eyes burning with crimson flame. Torchbearer, she called, voice amplified by ancient magic. You have stolen what was meant for the cleansing. The flame chooses sacrifice, not salvation. Lyra stepped forward. The flame chose hope, and it chose Frost. The leader sneered. Then let him prove it. From the rooftop tower, Frost watched them come. He saw the griffins, the red-robed zealots, the jagged scars on the land they left in their wake. He saw the fear curling at the edges of Starfire's brave faces. And he felt it too. But beneath it, something steadier, stronger. His power no longer fighting him. The flame welcomed him. He stepped out onto the tower's edge and jumped. Shadow bloomed like wings from his back. And when he landed in the courtyard, the marble didn't crack. It ignited. Enough! Frost's voice roared across the battlefield. You want the flame? You want your proof? He stepped forward, hands outstretched. I won't give you a war. I'll give you a choice. The leader laughed. There is no choice. The world must be purified. The blight still festers. Lysander emerged at Lyra's side. And you'd rather burn the innocent to make yourselves feel holy. We are the flame, the woman spat. And we will cleanse the cursed. Her hand rose, and fire rained from the sky. Chaos erupted. The palace shields flickered under impact. Griffins swooped low, claws dragging through defenses. Wolves charged. Magic clashed in arcs of gold and violet. And Frost stood in the center of it all, still focused. Burn the sky, the flame whispered. But spare the stars. He raised his hand, and the fire turned back on its creators. Gasps rang out as the Crimson Vow's own spells twisted midair, exploding in shock waves that sent griffins spiraling. Frost walked forward untouched as flames bowed away from him like servants before a king. I am not your weapon, he said. I am your mirror. And one by one, their fires died. Meanwhile, in the lower vaults, Lyra faced a far deadlier threat. As the palace trembled, the blight returned. Black roots surged through the stone, bursting from forgotten cracks, seeking warmth, magic blood. She met it head-on. Starlight burned at her fingertips as she dove into the dark, carving radiant pathways through the rot. But it kept regrowing, feeding off the chaos. Then she felt it. The Shadow King was rising again, but not in flesh, in belief. Too many had seen Frost's power and feared it. And fear was the Shadow King's favorite doorway. Lysander found her deep in the roots, barely holding a barrier of light between the spreading vines and a wounded soldier. Lyra, I can't hold it alone, she gritted. He dropped beside her. Then don't. They touched palms. Magic surged. Silver and steel, star and fire, merging, not clashing. Together, they carved a path to the rot's heart. And there they found it. A shrine, old, cracked, and pulsing with the same rune that burned beneath Frost's feet. Lysander stared. It's not just a prophecy. It's a curse. They had to break it, Lyra whispered. But the shrine was alive. It whispered their doubts, twisted their fears. He'll burn you all. He'll become what the Shadow King never could. Kill the torch before he becomes the flame. Lysander trembled. But Lyra reached forward. No, she said. He is the flame. But he is also the boy who walked into a courtroom broken and chose kindness. She pressed her hand to the shrine, and it shattered. Above, the battle paused. The Crimson Vow faltered, their magic flickering. Frost turned, sensing the shift. He felt Lyra's light surge beneath the earth and knew the curse was breaking. The leader screamed. No, it must burn. He must burn. But Frost only stepped forward. No, he said quietly. It ends. He raised his hand. And the flame consumed the sky. But it didn't destroy. It healed. Burned through rot, not life. Fused shadow and starlight into new hope. The griffins vanished. The zealots dropped to their knees, weeping. And the Shadow King's last whisper was lost in the wind. When it was done, the sky cleared. Lyra and Lysander emerged from the vaults. Frost stood in the courtyard, surrounded by firelight that didn't hurt, that didn't destroy. He turned and for the first time smiled. I'm not afraid anymore. Chapter 13. the boy who carried the flame. Weeks passed since the battle ended. The palace, once scorched and broken, now gleamed with new stone, veins of silver-threaded marble, hand-laid by wolves, witches, and even former enemies. Where death had once bloomed, life now stretched and flowered. But some scars didn't fade. Not yet. Frost stood beneath the same twin moons that once bore witness to his greatest fear. Only now he stood tall. His shoulders weren't hunched. His gaze didn't shift downward. He was still quiet, but no longer hollow. Behind him, Lyra approached, her steps light but sure. "You ready?" she asked. Frost hesitated, then nodded. "Let's go home." The Starfire court was full to bursting. Wolves lined the terraces in every direction. Pack alphas, lone rogues, enchanted healers, and broken exiles now restored. Lysander stood near the center altar, dressed not in armor, but in the ceremonial robes of a guardian regent. Beside him stood Lyra, her crown freshly forged, her smile radiant and unwavering. Today wasn't just a coronation. It was a rebirth. Lyra raised a hand. The crowd fell silent. "I was born into a legacy I didn't ask for," she said. "And I once believed that legacy required me to lead alone. But strength doesn't always wear a crown." She turned toward Frost. "Sometimes strength is quiet. It grows in silence, in shadows, in one kind gesture, in one saved life." A murmur of recognition swept through the wolves. They knew who she meant. Lyra stepped aside, and Frost walked forward. Not as a Frostborn, not as a weapon, but as Frost of the Flame. Lysander read the formal declaration. His voice was steady but full of pride. "By blood unbroken and fire unbound, the Court of Starfire names Frost of the Torch a guardian flame. Not to rule, but to guide. Not to destroy, but to protect." A gasp rippled through the court. No Frostborn had ever held a title. No outcast had ever been blessed with flame and star both. Frost knelt, and Lysander touched his shoulder with the ceremonial blade. "In your silence we found truth. In your fire we found hope." When Frost rose, the flame symbol burned brightly across the sky. Not in destruction, but as a beacon. And every wolf howled in joy. Later, beneath the quiet stars, Frost sat beside Lyra on the rooftop garden, legs swinging over the ledge like old times. "Did you mean it?" he asked softly. "About me not having to be a ruler?" Lyra leaned back on her palms. "Of course. Some leaders carry crowns, some carry swords. You carried all of us when we were breaking." He turned to her, eyes glinting. "I thought I was supposed to be the weapon." "You were," she said, "but you chose to be the light instead." They sat in silence for a while, comfortable and warm. Then he asked, "And if the Shadow King comes back?" She grinned. "Then we burn him together." That night, Frost lit the courtyard flame once more. Not as a summoner, not as a cursed child, but as a guardian. He thought of the boy he used to be, the one who hid in shadows and flinched from kindness. And he thought of the first time Lyra looked at him without fear. He whispered to the night, "I am not what they made me. I am not what they feared. I am what I chose to become." Far beyond the veil of magic, in the crumbled ruins of the Crimson Vow Sanctum, a spark remained. Tiny, flickering, but dangerous. A figure stepped through the ash, a woman with no face, wearing a chain of antler bones. She smiled and whispered, "The torch has been lit." But deep in the grove, the earth trembled, and the stars blinked. Something had noticed. But that's another story. The end.